Commercial property question time. We get a lot of questions on the YouTube channel, and thanks very much for putting them to me. In this video, these are some of the commercial property questions I'm going to answer for you. Hi, my name is Ranjan Bhattacharya. I've been investing and developing properties for 30 years. You may have seen me on the hit Sky TV show Property Elevator, or you may have attended one of the Baker Street property meets that I host, the UK's largest networking event for passionate property investors. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to answer your commercial property questions. If you've got any more questions you want me to answer on commercial property or any other topic, just leave them in the comments below. And also make sure you smash that like button because then YouTube puts our video out to more people like yourself. And if you're not already a subscriber, then why not? Make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you know as soon as we upload. Okay, our first question is from Martin Knowles, and what he's asking about is basically a topic that I've talked about a number of times, which is when you purchase a commercial property with an option agreement. So the question is this: when you control a property on an option and uplift the value by obtaining permitted development, are you able to give details of a lender or mortgage broker who will provide finance on the uplifted value? So to answer this question, let me give you a simple example from one of my students. One of my students has found a carpet shop from direct to vendor marketing. And the carpet shop has a couple of floors. It's 3 floors. It's a ground floor carpet shop with a couple of floors above. The proposal here, the plan here is simply to use permitted development to convert the upper floors into residential use. The deal he struck with the vendor is this: he's secured the property on an option agreement. All an option agreement is the right to buy the property from the vendor at a pre-arranged price, a predetermined price at a future point in time. And to get that option, the buyer pays the seller a consideration, which has to be a minimum of £1. Now, if you don't go ahead and buy it, you lose your option fee. Why is this such a powerful arrangement? Well, in this particular example, what my student is doing is applying for a certificate of lawful use to basically ratify in paper his right to implement his PD right to make 2 flats on the upper floors. As soon as the council has validated that permitted development is okay, if you like, what you've immediately done is uplifted the value of that piece of real estate. Because of course, if you've seen my other videos, you'll know that residential real estate per square foot is worth a lot more than commercial real estate. So just having the permission on paper to say that this space can be converted from commercial to residential use provides you an uplift in value. So once that piece of paper is received from the council, it's at that point that the buyer then exercises his option to complete on the purchase and buy the property. Now, at the time of purchase, no works have been done necessarily. It's just the permission to convert to residential use, but that has given an uplift in value. Now, the kind of lender you will use to finance that property on completion will typically be a bridging type of lender, a short-term financier, because doing this sort of thing is a kind of 2-step financing solution. You'll use one lender to buy the property, and then once the works are complete and the property is let out, then you'll use another long-term lender to give you a long-term mortgage on the property. And that's basically how you do it, Martin. So you're looking for an interim lender to fund the purchase, and that is usually a bridger. And bridging lenders will take into account, obviously, that the property value is different because it's got that residential conversion ratified. Now, of course, there's a lot more to it than that, and that just kind of whets your appetite for some of the solutions, if you like. If you like that answer, do smash that like button. If you've got any more questions around this, just leave them in the comments below. I'll get round to it in a future video. Now, this question from Kletus Moras is asking, where do you check out the value or price per square foot in a particular area, so that you know basically what things are worth? And what he's talking about is basically end values per square foot. Because I always talk about square foot. It's very important when you're doing any commercial property to understand how much you're paying for the property per square foot, what you want to make it into. And whatever you want to make it into, how much is that worth per square foot? And then how much is it going to cost to take it from where it is now to where you want to get to? And whatever's left is your profit, is your margin. It really is as simple as that. So it's all got to start with knowing what the end values are. If you're converting to residential usage, then you can find a lot of information from trusty Rightmove. So when you go on to Rightmove, of course, you can look up sold house prices. You go on there, you simply type in a postcode. You get a list of all properties in that postcode, and you find one that's similar, basically. And here you can see this particular property was sold for this amount. If you click on it, you get the details of that property. There's normally a floor plan, and on the floor plan it says the total area of the property, and then you just divide the sold price by the area of the property to get your price per square foot. Now, that's the cheap way of doing it. Now, the thing is, of course, some properties will sell for a higher price per square foot, some lower price per square foot. It depends on the precise location and the amenities and how well done up it is and all of that sort of stuff. So what you need to do is do an average, if you like. So you would have to do this repeated. You'd have to repeat it for several properties within a particular postcode and average everything out to get a more accurate feel. Now, that's a free way of doing it. But if you're a serious property investor, you probably want to subscribe to some kind of service that can cut out a lot of the sort of laborious work of getting price per square foot data. One of the sites that I recommend is propertydata.co.uk. I've got a link in the description below for you. And what they do is they basically tell you a lot of information. One of the most useful things they tell you is price per square foot information for properties which have been sold within a target area, and you can download spreadsheets and come up with your own averages as well. Very, very useful. It is absolutely essential when you're looking at any repurposing project that you get your end values correct and you estimate them correctly. And the best way of coming up with these estimates accurately is by looking at past data. Next question we have is from John Bolt, and he's asking, what do you think of co-working office space? Do you think this may be a promising development in office repurposing? Well, co-working, flexible working, hot desking, these are all things which are growing in popularity massively at the moment. You see, office space is a very, very funny segment right now. The way it has worked traditionally doesn't really work for the way businesses want to do business at the moment. Traditionally, if you wanted to rent out an office space, you'd have to take out a lease for 5 or 10 years. Now, the problem with businesses these days is they need a lot more flexibility than that. Because if I take out an office space, let's say I take out a 3,000 square foot office space for the next 10 years, on day one, that space is either going to be too big for me or too small for me. What I actually want is flexible space. So if I've got 5 staff now, I take space for what I need now. And if I'm growing or contracting in a year time, then I flex my space accordingly. Of course, we've had the COVID pandemic, and that's changed the office market quite considerably. What we're seeing is that people don't necessarily want to go into the centre of town and use public transport. So London office market has been adversely affected. But this whole thing that everyone's working from home is a little bit of a myth. While some people may have a dining room or a home office or a study or a spare bedroom that they can operate out of, many people are in 2-bedroom flats with open plan kitchen lounges, no spare bedroom, and a couple of screaming toddlers. Working from home is exceptionally difficult in those sort of circumstances. One of the biggest emerging trends in office spaces is what they call the hub and spoke model. So the hub, the central city London HQ kind of offices, that space is contracting. And what they seem to be doing is taking up more space in commuter towns. So people want to work. It's not that people need to work at home necessarily, but they need to work near to their home. And what's growing is the need for flexible working and co-working spaces, business centres in commuter towns where people actually live. So instead of actually commuting into the big smoke, they're still going into the office, but the office is right on their doorstep. If you're a regular viewer to this channel, you may have seen my vlog update on our own serviced office journey, because we've been converting a building in St Albans into serviced offices and co-working suites. Now, since lockdown has ended, of course, what we've seen is a massive growth in the number of inquiries that we are getting for people that used to commute into the big smoke, who now want something much closer to their own home. More news on what's happening with that serviced office project to come in a future video. Now, the exciting thing about the serviced office and co-working model is not just opportunities for big business centres like the one we're doing, but it's also repurposing smaller units as well. From September the 1st, we've got the new usage class E for commercial properties, and I've got a video on usage class E, which I'll put a link to up there. Now, what usage class E does is it puts in the same category a whole bunch of previous commercial properties. So, for example, dentist surgeries, GPs surgeries, newsagent shops, restaurants, or what have you. Now, and offices. Now, these are all now rest and sit in the same usage class. So what does that mean? That means if I take a former newsagent shop or a dentist surgery, if you like, one option I can do is reconfigure that space into flexible offices and co-working space without requirement for planning permission, in other words, under permitted development. And this will be a massive trend where people want to get out of their house, get out of their flats, have a sense of water cooler chit-chat, if you like, of an office environment, but have that office environment slap bang on their doorstep. Now, this is important because when you're repurposing commercial buildings and you may be repurposing a large amount of the space into residential usage, but for permitted development and to conform with various local planning policies, you may have to retain some commercial element in the building. And putting in a sort of a mini serviced office and some hot desks can be a very, very viable option in terms of utilization of commercial space if you have to retain some within a scheme. Finally, Ricardo Montenegro is asking, I'm new to the business. What's the best strategy to invest 100k in commercial property? Now, the first thing I have to say is this, and I've said this before, I know, on previous videos, but I can't emphasize this strongly enough. The first thing you've got to do is invest in yourself. You've got to invest in education. You've got to invest in getting yourself clued up. If you want to do commercial property, it's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different mindset. It's a whole different language. It's a whole different method for finding deals, dealing with commercial agents, dealing with commercial vendors, evaluating potential purchases at auction, number crunching the deals. All of it is a completely different animal to residential property. It's something that's straightforward, but it needs to be learned. As you know, we're in a recession right now, and the market ain't going to go up anytime soon. But if you're investing in a boom, quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you do, because the boom market masks your mistakes. It's a great learning ground, even if you get things wrong. Now, some of you may remember the show that used to be on Channel 4, Property Ladder, presented by Sarah Beanie. Now, one of the things I used to do back in the day, I used to be an advisor to the researchers on that show. And they'd ring me up with various scenarios and we'd sort of go through what the options should be. But when they filmed those episodes in the boom years, particularly, this was the 2007, 2008-ish, it was the same all the time. The researchers, what they would do is they would go out and find plonkers, basically. Stubborn plonkers who wouldn't listen to any of the advice and go their own merry way. Why? Because that made great TV. And you'd find in these boom years, Sarah Beanie would recommend that the people on the show do this, that, and the other, and they'd ignore them. And at the end of the show, you'd find that the property person still made money from the deal. And it wasn't, and that was despite them making so many mistakes. Why? Because in a rising market, in a rapidly rising market, you can kind of figure it out. You can kind of do it all DIY. You can make a ton of mistakes because the rising market will mask your mistakes. We're not in that sort of climate anymore. We're in a recession. The market ain't going anywhere. So your margin for error, your margin for making mistakes just ain't there. If you make a mistake, if you get investing wrong, then it will be your bottom line that will be affected and you'll come out with a loss. So the most important thing is not to put your money straight into a deal, but to put your money into getting clued up on how to actually do deals. Now, if you want to get started in commercial property, this Sunday I'm running a webinar all about commercial property investing and all about how to take advantage of the current market conditions to further your property career in commercial property. The link is property-workshop.com and it's in the description below. You can click on there and register for your free place. If you like this video, remember to smash that like button. And if you've got any more questions that you want me to answer on any topic to do with property, just leave them in the comments and I'll get to them in a future video. That's all for now and see you in the next episode.